Perfect. So this morning we have with us Brett Jackson. You've met Brett numerous times. He is the CEO of Systemax. They've hosted us earlier this year. He is also working with one of your groups on the case analysis. So welcome, Brett. Thank you for being here. We have Nichole Sperry, who's the Director of Marketing at Bunn. Creative Director at Bunn. And you've also met Nichole when we were visiting Bunn. And she walked us through the exercise of branding and creating a logo for the Bunn company. So welcome, Nichole. And we also have Barnabas Helmy, who is the founder of Smash Toast. It is a tech startup right here in Springfield, and they have a product called the Puck. And I will let Barnabas take just a minute to explain to us what the product is and what it does.
All right, should have brought one with me, but it's a little device, very simple Bluetooth to infrared bridge. The simplest way to explain it is it's like a remote without buttons. You stick it on anything you want to control and download our app, and it lets you control it from there. So that's it.
Doesn't work on people though.
Not yet. We tried. Not my daughter.
Yeah. All right. So welcome everyone, and thank you for being with us this morning. So to begin, marketing, the definition of marketing is that it's the process of creating relationships and satisfying customers. And my first question is going to Brett. If you were to define marketing based on your experience, how would you define it?
Just like you did.
Yeah.
I think it's just pairing the right communication with the right audience and making it appeal to them to get the action that you want them to take, whether that's sticking in their brain from a branding perspective or to elicit some sort of action like buy my product. So I guess that's how I would look at it.
Mm-hmm. And Nichole,
what's the real answer?
I don't have a real answer. It's funny, I was thinking about marketing on the way in here, and it's very subjective, just like art. How it works on the audience, it all depends. How it works on you to the person next to you is totally different. So I think a lot of it is trial and error. So you sit in a lot of different, like as you get older, maybe not you guys, but you sit in conferences or things like that where people say, this worked for me. And that you may take that and it may not work for your company or your what you're trying to promote from a marketing standpoint, but it's something to try at least. So marketing is so different. You guys have changed the way we market to people. Every generation ends up changing the way we market to people. So it's a lot of trial and error, in my opinion.
And do you use at Bunn or previous experiences? Have you guys used A/B testing as a way to understand, what works, what doesn't, and if you have, how did you analyze this information? What is there a specific process you go through? Are there certain things you're looking for? Or do you approach the information from, more of an agnostic view, like we're just waiting for the data to tell us something? Barnabas?
So you know that A/B testing is a big part of my world, and A/B testing is basically exactly what they have said in terms of marketing. I mean, it's a process to get somebody to do something, right? For me, I always have to figure out what that goal is first. So for me, selling a puck would be the biggest one. But A/B testing is on social media. I'll start off with 5 ads, all exactly the same, but same language, same everything, same audience, but all the images are different. Try those for a day, get 1,000 impressions on each one, and then the data tells us, well, these aren't performing well at all, but this one is. So we turn those off, duplicate that one 5 times, and maybe change a word in it. And just one variable so that you can know exactly what's affecting your audience, and then run those again, and you can do that till you're blue in the face. But the more you do it, the better your ad's going to run, and the less money you're going to spend on your goal. So that's A/B testing.
With the 2 distinctions that I'm hoping I can make here is a startup versus an established company. Are the approaches to marketing almost the same, or would you say that they're a bit different? And you have the startup perspective. Brett kind of has the startup perspective because you guys have to restart your brand and restart your company, and then you have the corporate perspective.
Yeah, I have the corporate perspective.
Yeah.
On that, I would say we have B2B and we have B2C too, so we have many different divisions within our company. As of right now, we operate very lean from a marketing perspective, so we honestly, social is not our drive from the B2B, even LinkedIn or anything like that, as of right now. We sell, it's complex, you have to have distributors, things like that, so someone's like, can I get this? And then you have to like take them through a distributor line, and so it's not always efficient. So from an A/B testing, part of what we do, it's not we don't necessarily do testing, but what we do is we look at our competition, who we go against. A big, like one of our biggest ones is Curtis out of California. So we look at what they do. We kind of look at their advertisements, things that they're trying to promote. They recently just got bought out by a larger conglomerate. So it's one of those things where what's the message we have to put out there in order to speak to the audience that they might be trying to get from us, that sort of thing. So not exactly, A/B testing necessarily, but it just comes from experience of, being in the industry for so long.
Mm-hmm. And Brett, you went through a rebranding exercise and changing your products and so on. That process, did it involve any of the elements of marketing that you would use today for helping companies rebrand, helping companies come up with marketing strategies?
Yeah, we had to basically start from scratch, and so just like in simplest forms, when we were thinking about our logo, we started to look at who is our optimal audience, and it tended to be females who were 35 to 45 plus, or in that age range. So we started to think about like what is imagery that would appeal to them, what are colors that are more appealing, and we didn't want to have like a harsh or like masculine brand. We wanted to appeal to our optimal audience, and so we took that into consideration, and then we developed all kind. I don't know. There's probably way too many options of logos for us to choose from, but then started to look at that audience and saying which one of these is appealing to you, and which one do you resonates with you, which one do you get drawn to, and that helped shape just even our logo. But we do that when it comes to copywriting and imagery that we use. It's all geared towards our optimal audience, and then we're taking feedback, and it is wonderful on the social platforms that, just like Barnabas said, like we have one ad set that has 100 different variations in it, and Facebook is telling us which one is getting the optimal interaction, and it could just be copy changes or image changes. Do you have a link in there? Do you not? And then we use that data that they're providing to us to then change where we spend money.
From a startup perspective, how do you know? We talked about audience, and in other terms, like you're looking for your target market, who is going to be your customer. When you're a startup and you don't have customers yet, how do you know who is going to be your ideal target market, or who is going to work with your product?
Well, that's a big challenge in general. I mean, if you're starting from scratch with a product, so like an invention that's hard to, explain in that elevator pitch immediately, how do you get that across in an attention span of 1.5 to 2 seconds, on the internet? So that is a big challenge. And for me, that's been a process of discovery with our first unit. We tried retail, we tried these different channels and in our ads, and who's buying this, who's doing what. And for me, that, you can always look at the data, but talking to customers, like having interactions with them, is really, because we don't have all the money in the world to spend on marketing and testing and stuff. So I've really got to figure out who our audience is. And through the iteration of our first unit, we just released the second. We've really narrowed in on those, target markets that we have. So I think, as much as the data can tell us, there is an element that you have to actually interact with your customers too to find out what they're doing.
In the second semester, they will be working on starting their own businesses. And part of the things that they will be researching and trying to answer is, who is the audience? Who's this product meant for? Who's the service meant for? Do you have any advice on what is that first step in that journey of discovery of who your target market is?
Put as many of whatever your product is or your idea in front of as many people as you can, like initially, even while you're building it or while you're testing it, to see what their reaction is. And that's not really marketing, but it helps you in the end of it, I guess, towards delivery of that product. But I would say, talk to your potential target audience and figure out what they want. It'll make your life targeting them a little bit easier as well. Now, as far as, I think Facebook ads are a great way to test ideas, though. I mean, if you've got something fleshed out and you want to, experiment on who you're going to get some good data about audience and gender and age, that kind of stuff, and some interests. So.
Brett, there's we often hear from especially startups or people starting a new product that says, well, everyone will want my product.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Will everyone want a product?
Everybody wants a commercial coffee maker in their house, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
I mean, we get that a lot, and it is very challenging to market to everyone. And so if you were trying to do that, like if you're tied, that your marketing budget has to be so astronomical to reach all audiences that there's no way you have enough money to do it. I don't even know that Tide has enough money to do it effectively. So you have to pick a lane and you take your best guess, but everyone may be able to use your product, but you need to find like who's that optimal, like 85% right spot, and that's where I want to spend my time and energy and effort just to make headway there. Who are the people who are going to adopt this first, and who are going to be like our prime audience of using this thing? And that's where I'd spend my money, because you aren't going to have an unlimited budget.
So going off of that, just reminds me, I have a friend who just published his first book, and it's about Notre Dame. His grandfather was part of some small university and back in the day, and won some big game over Notre Dame. I haven't read it yet. I'm gonna have to, I'm sure. But he was like, "How can I market this book?" And he's like, "I want to put some money in Facebook marketing." And I was like, "Well, who are you targeting?" He goes, "Everybody that went to Notre Dame." He was like, "You think they're gonna, I said, "You're okay. Well." And then I broke the numbers down. Okay, well, average like $20 is kind of an average. It's called cost per marketing, CPM, where $20 to hit 1,000 people, and take that, okay, and if you can get a decent conversion rate of 2%, so of all the 1,000 people you hit, maybe 2% will click on it, and then maybe 2% of those will buy it. And we started doing a reversal of the numbers against his audience, and I'm like, I'm not going to make any money on this. And like, no, you're not, and you're trying to hit everyone at Notre Dame. Maybe you should hit people that, narrow it down to people that maybe went to school during that period, played football or something, and just figure out a very small audience that maybe you can get your conversion rate higher. And it's all about tweaking those numbers, and if you can figure it out, then you can make a little bit of money on it. But otherwise, you're just doing like scatter shot into the air and hoping you hit something, and you will lose money doing that.
And then you hope that once you start selling to people, they have word of mouth, because that's the most powerful marketing.
Yep, by far.
So.
And when we think of Bunn, you have you're selling to businesses, you're also selling to consumers.
Mm-hmm.
When you're selling to businesses, are you trying to target the business itself? Or are you hoping that it's more of the coaches, the people who are going to train the other people on using the tools, that they would have some say of saying, the Bunn makers, it's easy for us to use, we know how to use it, therefore we'd like you to buy Bunn. Is it for the employees who are going to use it, because then that it's easier for them?
Yeah.
How do you do it?
We strictly market to channels, so that would be channels being restaurants, hotel and lodging, convenience stores, things like, so those are types of channels that we have. And then after that, then we strictly try and relate to the buyer. The buyer for, the buyer, in my opinion, could also be the operator, depending on where you're looking, if you're at a cafe or something like that. But the buyer also wants to know the exact same things as a business owner who will also be an operator. So that's kind of how we attack it. We just go from a channel perspective, because for us, there's so many different ways that we could attack it. It would be insane. So we just go channel, and then we go directly towards the person buying.
I want to talk a little bit about social media. And the question is, or the premise of it is, we still talk about social media as if it's this new tool, when currently the social media that exists with us has been around for about 15 years with the start of Facebook. If we were to, what is new today in marketing that is similar to social media, or is it still social media is the the newest thing in marketing today?
I have an answer to that.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Go
No,
for it, yeah.
no.
So, yeah. me. Okay, so one of the things that I thought was absolutely interesting is I read an article where they're saying email is coming back. Because if you think about it, like now Facebook is cluttered with ads and we're all just like whatever, and we've moved off from Facebook and things like that. So your most captivated audience is going to be an email, which is someone who's actually opted in. There's all these legal ramifications around that, but they have to opt in. So they're saying that email is coming back around, which is really interesting to me because email used to be dead. So, and I'm not saying that is right now, but this was an article saying that's where we're going towards, just because social is so crowded with stuff. So
I
that's,
can see that.
yeah.
My email list is so well groomed, and it's like I protect it with everything, you know, because those are my most. I know that I'm going to get like over 50% opens on those. That's like a great email list. And if I'm going to do anything new or announce anything, that's where it goes first. And and I honestly have it tied up so that it posts that to Instagram, all the social media stuff. But it's more of an afterthought for those, because I know those people aren't tracking me that closely on social media. It's the email list.
And
really
I operate the same in that regards for the restaurant. So we send anybody who follows our email accounts, we send them the invitations to our private events, like not private, but like where you need a reservation, like the Valentine's Day, things like that. So you get a special treatment, I guess, if you operate, if you work with us that way. If you want to friend us, if you're truly interested in food and that sort of thing, then we'll hit you up first, and then we'll share it socially. So.
And Brett, you work with many different type of businesses, and some of them you want them to be on social media, and some of them you want them to use emails.
Build ads on Facebook, or how to run ads on Instagram, create a YouTube channel. I mean, you could spend a weekend and you can understand enough. It's just most people are lazy and they don't want to put in the time.
You want someone to tell them how to do it.
Yeah.
Or someone to tell them that, I think a big part of it is what you're saying is like, there's a fear of being uninformed and wasting your time on something, because it is an investment of time to do that, and it's understanding data, which is like not fun for a lot of people. It is for me, but I'm weird. But we like that because we know it drives. We understand what's the end result is. But yeah, it's informing, especially a client, that this can be a very useful spend.
And Barnabas, you work on political campaigns in previous life, and so you've used a lot of your data analysis skills and some of your marketing skills to help with these campaigns. So do you see that marketing has wider applications in daily life beyond product and service?
Yeah. So I used to sell people, not products. Then I decided it was way more fun to sell products because they don't talk.
Is that illegal trafficking?
Yeah. Political.
Okay.
But that's where we learned the value of data analytics, and this was in a time where we would get it started filing cabinets, because a lot of places in Illinois just didn't have like digital voting stuff set up yet. So like Excel, we had to put in all the numbers for precinct voting data, and it was horrible. But I was learning that's where this whole conversion thing and your whole goal. I mean, they have a very well defined goal, 50 plus 1. 50, which is a term in 51% of the vote, or whatever you need to win. And it's not always 51% of the voters. It's 51% of the people who are going to vote. And so, it was really interesting for me to learn those concepts, and I just applied those to the rest of the world. So I think there's a lot to learn from other spaces that you can draw in, vice versa. I'm not really sure if I'm answering your question, but that's a whole other fascinating world.
I want to pull in Mark for the conversation, if I may. Cafe Maxo has been very successful. You have a big following. You obviously have an excellent product, but beyond the product, how do you get the word out about your business? How do you create the culture that gets people to want to be part of this place, whether to work here or whether to be customers of this place?
I mean, to be honest, the easiest thing was to get the people I think, to get people to want to work here. You know, we tried to create a culture that was inclusive and that understood the struggles of what everybody goes through. Whether that's how much you get paid. You know, I know we have a lot of things about minimum wage coming up where it's going to be $15 an hour here in not too long. And that's coming. You know, I mean, it's getting crazy. We've been doing that since '09. So we've been at $15 an hour since '09 with full medical, dental, vision, life insurance. It was one of the things that I thought, okay, how can we get people to stay here? So once we got them to stay here, what do we have, 20, between the two locations, I think it's 24 and a half employees or something like that. We wanted all full-time. The half, he's really a good guy, but he's not that tall. No, he's a good guy, but he's a part-time guy, so that's okay. I go for all full-time people. I think they're fully invested. And once you get the employees to buy in, they can help sell the customers. You know, when we were looking for locations, I wasn't originally from here, and I really wanted a location that put feet on the street. I'm a huge believer in downtown. We're very captive down here. There's only so long that you have to go out and get a cup of coffee or to get lunch. You're not going to be able to always go from downtown to the west side or something like that. So we wanted feet on the street. We wanted a captive audience. And then, you know, these guys are marketing geniuses, and we are not. We have a lot of luck, I think, behind us. My biggest marketing plan was what one of them said was word of mouth. It's how we've done it for almost 13 years. If I could figure out, we opened on a street where the farmer's market was, and there's 3,000 to 5,000 people walking by our front door every week. If I could figure out how to bring you in one time, but I couldn't figure out how to bring you back, I don't think any amount of money that we would have spent towards a marketing budget would have helped us. If you wouldn't have gone and told one of your friends or your mom or a cousin and brought them back and enjoyed maybe what we did, then I don't think, you know, radio, print, social media, whatever the case was, wasn't really going to help us. Now we're at a little bit of a different turn, where I have a lot more respect for what those guys do and what they bring to their products and their businesses, because now I'm trying to figure out, now that we've been here, how do I get you in here if you're not in here? How do I get the new people that haven't heard about us? And that's, I think, one of my biggest struggles is, and we lean pretty heavily on social marketing, but it's just me. I have to come up with the menus, I have to come up with the employees, I have to come up with the marketing. So my time is very limited in what I can spend on that, which is why I hope I can help, some of these guys up there can help me in the future. So I mean, that's kind of, you know, that's kind of it. So I really thought I was going to invest more in employees that can help sell the product versus the product help sell the product.
I think it's, you're saying when you chose this location, did you choose it because of the farmer's market?
I did. There were several things. I was from St. Louis, so I didn't know anything about Springfield. I will tell you, I got laughed out of 3 banks, physically laughed out of 3 banks, because I wasn't going to go on the square. They said, if you don't go on the square, you're going to be out of business in 6 months. We were, at that time when we opened, the furthest restaurant away from the square, and the only restaurant basically on this side of 5th Street. And there were so many people that were just frankly thought I was a little goofy. But I went around, I came up here from St. Louis probably 200 times over the course of 2 years. And I followed people in how they walked around downtown. I actually had a speed gun, and I would track how fast cars were going, and then I would drive around downtown and try to figure out what lights I could make it through and what lights I got hung up at. And this street right here has the most parking in all of downtown, and it is the slowest street in all of downtown. So if I can get you to see my sign or to stop or something like that, then I thought, well, I can get you to come in. And that was kind of it.
That doesn't sound like luck, though. It sounds
That's a really cool. How many of you guys have been to restaurants that you're like, oh my gosh, that horseshoe was the best, or those French fries were phenomenal, or that sandwich was fantastic, and boom, I mean, they're gone in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. So there is a good amount of luck into it, but there's a lot of passion too. This is all I've ever wanted to do since I was 4. So this would be a truck driver, because truck drivers get to eat out every meal. So, I mean, honestly, growing up, we had to put on our report cards what we wanted to be when we got older. I either wanted to be a restaurant owner or a truck driver. So, I still didn't buy that truck. Yeah.
That's cool.
With this, my portion of the questions has ended, so I'm going to open it up to you guys. If you have any questions for the panelists, and Mark. Cillian.
It's kind of a question for everybody. But in your opinion, what's the hardest part about marketing? Is it trying to find your target audience or who to target to, or is it trying to decide how much money you want to spend on each advertising or how much you want to spend as a whole? What, in your opinion, is the hardest part about it?
For me, the hardest part by far is, well, like you said, time. It's figuring out exactly who I'm going to market to and spend that money, because there are so many options. And right now I've got 2 huge opportunities. One of them isn't proven yet, but it's medical and it's astronomically great, but I have to sell continually. I can't ignore what I'm already selling. So I'm trying to figure out how I can market to these guys to just scrape a little bit of money. So I mean, I guess it's like a budgeting plus going what you know works type thing. So like, I guess, so investigating new market channels I think is the most challenging part, because you know there's opportunity, but you got to come up with money for it.
In my role as a creative director, I would say fighting for the proper creative. It's like I said, it's subjective. What we like, the art is subjective. I'm predominantly in my mind right now speaking in print ads, because that's something that we always have to go through. But I think what you put out there is so important to who you're also marketing, and so I fight for the creative. Like that's if you're not speaking to your brand properly, or putting the correct message out there, or to the point of what we've all talked about is targeting the correct person, then you wasted your money from the start. So that's where my focus is 100% on the creative. Everybody else does the other stuff. I don't do that.
I'd say very similar. I think that the hardest part is convincing, so let's say you're in charge of marketing for an organization, convincing the organization that they should spend money in an area that is in alignment with what you're trying, like who your target market is. And usually the owner of that company is not that target market. So convincing them that you need to use these channels when that doesn't appeal to them, that's very challenging, because it's hard to market to someone who is not yourself. It's very easy to figure out how to market to yourself, but it's very challenging for you to figure out how to market to a 47-year-old female. You're not that person, and so you don't know what their life is like, and it's hard for people to put themselves in other people's shoes and find out what's appealing and convince people to get a budget to do that.
Yeah. Comes back to Barnabas, go out and ask around.
Joe?
So as Nichole said, marketing is very subjective. So do any of you suggest studying marketing in an academic setting over getting real world experience in marketing?
I'm going to speak from my background. I started in electrical engineering, ended up getting a fine arts degree, and yeah, right. So that's kind of what I used to say in the fine art stuff is like, why aren't you guys teaching us marketing? Because like I switched my degree from something I'm going to make a bunch of money at to something I have to market myself, sell myself a lot, and they didn't. And they used to always tell me I was worried too much about money. But you know, I think one of the most valuable things I learned from that process was, again, when you talk to your customer, they're not always going to say the nicest thing to you. They're not gifted, you know, as you may be in the visual or the marketing language. But you've got to be able to, you know, it's a critique, right, of your product, yourself, your baby. Be able to draw what they're saying. If it's like, this thing sucks, dude, why? Why does it suck? Don't take it personally. Just say, what do you think would be better for you, like if it was for you? And then those people that are willing to talk to you are often going to be gold for you down the line. I mean, I've gotten investors from bad product reviews. Like, you know, those people turned around and helped me and everything else. So I really emphasize talking to your customer and learning what you can do to make the product better for them, because ultimately that's what's important.
To answer your question, in my opinion, it will only help you. because what you're gonna learn is the terminologies. You may not, like, I think real world experience is always the best thing, but I took art history. As a graphic designer, so I can explain to a reason why I created something the way I did. It's not just like, I just felt like that was pretty. You know, like you have to give, like, you have to sell, like to his point, you have to sell yourself. So the best way to do that is to be fully educated on what you are doing. So to my opinion, if you want to go into marketing, yes, it's powerful. Are you gonna, when you hit the real world, what you're probably gonna say is, why do you need to go to school for this? You know, you're probably gonna say something like that. But what you don't realize through that whole process is you've learned like terminologies and, you know, things of that nature that helps you speak to what you're doing, which makes you obviously sound intelligent and other people will want to believe you, that sort of thing. I mean, you're always selling. Even though I hate salespeople.
And you always learn more when trial by fire being thrown into the oven, but you know, if you can get an advantage by taking those classes, when you are thrown into the fire, you're going to understand it quickly. And probably, you know, sweat a little less in the beginning, but at the end of the day, I think there's no substitute for being thrown into the fire.
Yeah.
You learn so much so quickly, even if you don't realize it and you want to cry every day.
And I think both things, real world and you know, and education behind it. To be honest with you, I was a guy that went to St. Louis College of Pharmacy. So, because I just wanted to come out and make an $80,000 a year, work a job, nice air conditioning and stuff like that. And I finally fell back in love with food, but I don't think had I not gone through St. Louis College of Pharmacy and learned how things interact with your tongue, how you digest items, how different drugs work with foods, and how everything tastes. You know, we build every sandwich here. I know it sounds very basic and very minimal, but we build every sandwich in the same order. You know, there's the spreads, there's the lettuce, there's the veggies, because everything from an acidic point of view, a sour point of view, and a taste point of view, how it goes through your mouth, I learned in pharmacy school, and it wasn't out of trial and error. So if you come in here, you should get the same thing every single time. You know, one of the things that we have to battle is with the advent of Food Network and Yelp and TripAdvisor and everybody knowing everything about food out there. Everybody's become a food critic. Everybody knows more than what other people know, and there's a ton of people that know a lot more than me. So we get that everyday experience of you liking something or not liking how we did something, because you guys leave reviews on those things. You know, unlike, you know, maybe some businesses, we have to battle that social media review. You know, TripAdvisor can kill us.
Yeah.
Yelp can kill us. You know, we've been, and not to be too our own horn, I mean, but we've been the number 1 or 2 ranked restaurant on TripAdvisor for almost 13 years. And we don't have table service. We don't have waiters. We don't come out here and bust your own tables, but we give you a little bit different of an experience as somebody else. We don't charge you $25 for your meal. You may only spend $12. But whatever that may be, we've had to figure out how to compete with that and get that real world experience of what you're giving us every day from reviews and stuff like that.
I started as a ceramics major in college and then switched to the obvious transition, which is economics. So I like the combination of art and data. So my answer would be both. But if you're sitting at an interview in my office and you've got real life experience and you've shown me campaigns that you've ran and gotten success from it versus a degree from, I don't care what top school, I'm going with the person who actually did it versus the person who has a degree from somewhere, because that doesn't show me that you can actually do it. Now, if you can do both, that's even better.
Other questions? John?
How have you determined your marketing budget, and how has that changed over the years?
You get as much as the company will give you.
Yeah.
And you fight for twice as much.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen statistics. If you look at some companies, will spend 5% of their sales dollars to just kind of maintain. If they want to grow slightly, they'll spend 10% of their revenue. If they want to grow more, they'll do 15%. But if you're a software company, they're spending 60, 70, 80% of their revenue on marketing, like startups or Salesforce.com. Like, they're spending an astronomical amount on their marketing budgets because they're just trying to convert, like, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to convert to acquire customers and then sell your company at some point in time because you've acquired this many customers, then you go heavy on marketing. If you're running a 40-year-old company and you want to continue to grow organically, then you're probably going to dial it back, but it really depends. And then it depends on how much the ownership or the people who are giving to the CFO, how much they believe in marketing as well.
Yeah.
You'll never have enough money
Yeah.
to do all the marketing you need.
So
And it always seems like it's an afterthought too. And this is, I run the budget for my company, and it always seems like, oh my God, why didn't I spend more time really focusing on this? Because it's honestly what drives everything, you know? I mean, the product may be great, but if you don't have a marketing budget, you're screwed.
What is the most important skill or attribute that someone would need to be successful in marketing or business in general? Is that like something that you're born with, or something you can learn through education? Like, what's your take on that?
It's a good question.
Well, in my, because I wear so many different hats, I think tenacity is a big word, not giving up on it, because it's easy to get lost in the weeds, right? And when you're overwhelmed with stuff. So I think one of the most important things is just being able to, organization is a huge thing, but just making sure you've got that tenacity to keep accomplishing things every single day, even if you don't see the reward in the end. So I really, you know, beyond that, you obviously have to have creativity and the ability to digest numbers and, you know, data. But I think that is the main quality, is like tenacity in the startup world. So.
And Toastmasters last week, tenacity was the word of the day.
Oh, was it?
And
There
he
we
hit it
go.
3 times, didn't he? He said it 3 times.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What do you guys think?
I would build on that only because, but from a standpoint of fighting for the creatives, it's apparently something I do often.
Mm-hmm.
So it's because, once again, I'll say it again, it's subjective. So you're selling your idea. So to me, that's the hardest thing. If you truly believe in something, then you have to have all your ducks in a row about why and what your research is and that sort of thing, so you can be prepared for any sort of conversation around that, so you can say why you feel like this is the best creative or the best spend for the company or something of that nature.
I'm just thinking about the problems that we have at our office, and they would all be solved by better communication. And so if you can communicate with others and relate with others and show empathy, and I would say if you have that skill, that solves a lot of problems, and I think that you'll be more valued because you're the one who can bring everybody together, or you're the one who can communicate your idea better to internally or to the client. If you're the accountant, you can talk to a salesperson, who those worlds don't always mix well, or customer service to sales. Nobody mixes well with sales. So like if you can bridge that with good communication skills, I think, and being able to communicate to all different generations and parts of the world, I think I would take that every day.
Other questions?
Can you guys explain how the conversion rate works for ads?
Conversion rate works? Okay, so when you start an ad, you have a goal, right? You don't just put up an ad and say, okay, this is it, but a specific goal. So if my goal is get them to click on the ad so that they go to the website, and at the end of the day, the conversion would be clicking on the ad. So if I'm able to convert the customer, so if I get 1 out of 10 customers to click on the ad, then my conversion rate is 10%. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if often on an ad you have a couple of conversion rates, right? The one for clicking on the ad, and then when they're on the site, will they purchase it? So there's another conversion rate there you have to do. Really, your numbers get big, and it matters so much, those tiny little incremental changes. Like a 1% conversion rate can mean a lot more purchases. Additional 1%.
Do you think a lot of companies today like suffer from marketing that's ineffective and like not doing the research?
Yes.
Period.
Yeah. You can always improve it.
I think you can always improve it, and I don't think that it just has to stop at selling products. we're working with companies who are just, they're basically using their marketing budget to attract talent. They have to go fight, an accounting firm, they have to go fight the big four for attracting people to come work there. And so they're using their marketing budget to make their company look more appealing to attract talent to come to their exhibit at the hiring fair at U of I. And so using better tactics to get more people to their booth, that's a marketing issue, and I think people aren't doing that well. So marketing can go in so many different directions, but yeah, I mean, I haven't found a issue within a company that isn't somehow tied to marketing.
So how you were talking earlier, when you're changing the ad and just skewing things to see which one's the most profitable and best, like how long will you leave that out there for before you take it off until like you leave
To make a change.
It goes lower, or, yeah.
So my rule of thumb is 1,000 impressions. That's a statistically relevant number, right? So when you get to 1,000, then you can consider that that's a pretty good population to make a judgment on that number. If it's like 100 people, you don't know, you know. So let each ad, when they hit 1,000 impressions, and you know, and that can be depending on. So for me, when I A/B test, it's about $100 budget over a week, and I'll do 5, right? And it's a sample audience that I know I'm going to hit 1,000 this day, make a change. 1,000 impressions the next day, make a change. So, yeah.
Would you guys say it's important to have a bit of a background in statistics when analyzing advertising?
I didn't, but I have, you know, I went back to school to learn some stuff about it, or I take online classes, and you can. The numbers start to present themselves, and you know, when you start doing it, they start to make themselves known to you, and you want to learn more about them, right? You're like, oh, I see why that's working. So you can kind of, yeah, it helps a lot, but I think you can kind of learn that on the fly too, because you start understanding that this one's working better, why, and then, you know.
I mean, if that's something you want to go into though, if you're a numbers person and that's what you want to do and you like that as the marketing aspect, then, but I didn't, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've seen two types of marketing professionals. Ones that are just very emotionally driven and they go with what their gut tells them and how it makes them feel. And then there's like the quantitative marketer who will not make an action until they have all of this data to then take one step forward. So if you're going down that path and you like that aspect, then yeah, I think that the numbers are important. You're always going to have to prove your results to someone, whether it's yourself or you know, the CEO, the CFO. You're always going to have to prove that. So if you've got the ability to work with those numbers and show the correlation to your spending to the results, that's going to be to your benefit.
What are some marketing mistakes you guys made?
All of them. When you said going with your gut, like I have put time into really grooming what I thought was perfect ad, and run it, but again, A/B tested and tweaked it to the perfect ad. There have also been times where I went with my gut and said, oh my God, and it was more panic driven, you know, and I said, this ad doesn't work, I need to do something, and then just scrap my marketing plan and do something and waste of money. I'm like, why did I just do that, you know? So not being thoughtful about my approach it often leads to mistakes. Like, I guess that's probably the biggest mistake I make.
I have a good one that involves Bunn, actually, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, I'm from St. Louis and I had a personal relationship with Fetco. Now, most of you guys would not know who Fetco is, but so we had done this coffee shop campaign, and I had all Fetco equipment in here, not Bunn equipment. So being from St. Louis, not knowing, I knew Bunn was here and I knew they were a beast, but I didn't fully believe in them, or I didn't have enough history about them, and I was uneducated. And I got more negative reviews about not using a hometown product in showing how you make a latte that I think within a week we had switched over to all Bunn equipment and everything like that. And so that was a marketing mistake. And it was just as small as showing how to make a latte and do a little flour on top, you know, just something for fun. but it was a marketing snafu that I did, yeah. And I learned quickly.
I like that story.
Yeah.
Brett? We screw up a lot of stuff, or at least I have. Not using the right terminology. I guess this is one that we've seen. We had an ag company that we were working with, and the first round of proofs, before it went to the customer, the designer had used crops that grew on the East Coast. They were trying to sell planting, but they had a combine in there, and if anybody knows anything, that's the opposite thing to showing it. So they just had the wrong context to, I guess, going back to good creative. If you're not in tune with the client's product, that could have been a massive problem.
Yeah.
I want to say a specific, since you guys are mentioning. So with digital campaigns, it's so much easier because you can just press click. But I now emphasize to people I train, just look over everything one more time before you press play. Because I had an incident when I was doing political stuff, and it was an African American candidate, female from Chicago, and I'd set everything up. This is several $1,000 campaign, right? And we did all this stuff, and then Facebook pops up, hey, you didn't do this. I'm like, oh, okay. Because it's changing all the time. That platform changes weekly. So you're always like, what the hell? And I did it, and then I did everything, press click, and it had reset my audience, and it sent it all over the U.S. This very localized, targeted thing, which is supposed to be in a district in Chicago, went all over the place. And maybe 1 hour it went on, but rural places in Ohio, it was gross. The comments and everything, it was what the heck? You really get to see the cross section, but big mistake. Oh my God. So
double check.
Always double check. Always double check before you submit.
Okay. So with how social media is right now, Facebook, you said, you use it a lot, and it gives you the data instantly back. Like you said, you do print ads and other avenues to market. Is it a lot harder to analyze the data you get from that? A lot harder to do testing and stuff like that. How do you work around that?
You gotta pay for that, but we do. We'll do ad studies. So basically, some magazines, print companies, they'll do ad studies, and then they pull an audience that looked at the magazine, and then they ask all these different questions, and then whether or not they recognized your brand, and what do they recognize about it, and that sort of thing. And so that's honestly our only way. Outside of that, the other way is where you do a custom URL on the page, but that means they would have to actually go to that URL to know whether or not they actually, that's an action. But that's another way to see if that was resonating, with the audience. But and then you wait. I think we ran an ad in February, and we just got an ad study back that we won an award on, but and that's one that we did without the sales input, just FYI. So, and I was sure to tell my CEO that, but it was just one of those things where we placed the ad in February, and I don't think we got the feedback on it until in May, so it's that's the other thing too. I think sometimes people when you're doing the marketing for your company, at least, you're like, God, I feel like I just said this, but there's so many people who haven't read it, so you have to be persistent and consistent in what you're saying and what you're putting out there. So my point on that is, if you did an ad in February and you're not sure, and you don't get the results till May, my recommendation is to continue running it, until you get, the money's there and all that good stuff. But
Any last questions?
Yeah. I've heard both, but would you guys market more qualitatively or quantitatively? Which it can be different for different markets or different places in the company's timeline. So,
that's different for you.
We do it based off what the client wants, and so if they, depending on which way they go, we kind of adapt our approach a little bit. So I don't know that I can give you I like the data. I like to be able to track the results back to sales or whatever we're trying to accomplish, and be able to prove our worth and value. So I always want to skew to that, but it's going to depend on who's running the show, for us at least.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same here. In an ideal world, you'd want two minds, like in my opinion, where, you know, that you have a balance of both of those. I'm strictly emotional. I'll just, you know, creative, emotional, well, you know, whatever. But you're quantitative, so.
Well, yeah. No, it's
yeah.
a lot of that.
Oh, yeah. Marketing, this is my favorite quote. We use it, I mean, not really good for you, but it's all liquor and guesswork.
Yeah. So
That's what we use at Bunn.
I do have to have both minds going. So for my stuff that I know is selling right now on Amazon, it's all quantitative numbers. It's all numbers, trying to improve that efficiency. But with attacking this new market, the medical, and I have a different customer, and I can't necessarily hit them digitally. It's purchasing people in spinal cord injury rehabilitation hospitals. So we're doing a different box, and we're doing a puck medical specific. And it's, you know, it's extremely creative. It's a little white box that you open up, and it has a nice little video on it, embedded into it. It's not cheap, with the puck inside, you know, and you open it up, and it shows you this video about how it's been used with people with spinal cord injuries. So that is going to have to be pure creative, and I'm really trying to make sure that, because it's going to be like $100 per unit to ship these out to specific individuals. So that one, it definitely has to be creative. But the other side that I know is selling, I just am trying to refine those numbers as much as possible.
This has all been great stuff, and with that, our panel comes to a conclusion. Thank you so much for your time.